Welcome inside Brunch. Brunch is 2 hours where we sit and we discuss of the issues that affect us here in the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago. Sometimes we take what's directly in your focus. Other times we go on the periphery and bring it into view. This morning we need no help in bringing into view a couple of the issues we'll be talking about this morning. One of them, of course, is going to be the state of our prisons, and we will be speaking with the Inspector of Prisons this morning to deal with that overcrowding situation where folks spend as much as 12, 13, that is almost a norm, in remand. And that contributes, of course, to qualified criminals going in as an accused, coming out as a well-trained criminal. We will talk about that this morning. The Minister of Finance said what he had to say on Friday. How is that received by economists? We will find out that when we speak to Dr. Marlene Atz, who is a lecturer at the Department of Economics, University of the West Indies. We will sit down and look at what was proposed. Is it wise for us to say $35 a barrel is what we're paying this thing at, or maybe we should have looked at $30? We find out about that. But the top of everybody's lips, well, at least most leaders all over the world, is that question of Mr. Noriega. No, not him specifically, but his country, Panama. The place that Mr. O'Halloran inspired David Rudder to talk about. Panama is where everybody's attention is focused this morning. That's where we're going to start our morning. The whole issue of the Panama Papers is now in the public domain, and we're hearing countries all the way, whether it be from Russia on the one hand down to the United States, across the globe, and you go across to China, or you come back down to South America. No matter where you go, the issue is the Panama Papers because they're affecting everybody. My guest is Mr. Rishi Maharaj. He's been with us before. He has worked within the public sector as a senior technical in a senior technical capacity for over 8 years, and he's going to provide us in-depth and insight into the operation of this thing called money laundering. He knows that very well. He's a holder of a BSc and an MSc in government from the University of the West Indies. He's a former director of the Research Policy and Planning Unit and Senior Freedom of Information Officer. It's really good to have you here. If I go through all your credentials, I will be talking for the next 5 minutes. So let us just say welcome, Rishi. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me.
It is good to have you back, and so even better to have you on the microphone. Lay out for us, please, this issue of the Panama Papers. Now, it's far-reaching. I mean, we've had the Iceland Prime Minister who resigned. Well, he said, "Hey, I'm going to take a leave of absence." But you're having ripples happening all over the world, and it's not even a ripple. You're having an earthquake happening all over the world because this is revealing a lot of shell companies being set up in different places, but specifically in Panama, and how this money was moved about. What we don't know is because we get headlines all the time, and you as the CEO of Disclosure Today, which is not, let me just make clear, not aligned to Transparency International, that was my error before, you from Disclosure Today being the CEO of that organization, you understand what is involved here because your organization calls for transparency. And transparency would have led us to a situation where half the things we are seeing would not be. So lay out for our listeners in detail, what exactly is offshore banking?
Okay, well, good morning to yourself and good morning to your listeners. Basically, I guess all this came out of the massive leak we had coming out. Well, actually, the leak started last year. Okay, leak was leaked from Mossack Fonseca last year, and it took journalists close to a year of doing a lot of background research and information and fact-finding. Before now, a year on, we've now begun to see some of the fruit of that labor.
So many papers that it took journalists from across the world. No one group could have worked with this. Millions of documents.
Yeah, close to 3 terabytes of data. I think it's more than the WikiLeaks and the Swiss and all those other leaks that came out combined. So and it touched on major on countries, basically all over the world, 150 countries, close to 200 leaders, I think, and affiliates have been named. And it basically touches on the fact of utilizing services like what Mossack Fonseca offered to allow corporations and to allow individuals the ability to set up offshore companies, shell companies, either through Panama or through other avenues. I think they used the British Virgin Islands. I think the Cayman Islands was also used at some point, and even Luxembourg and those other countries, to be able to set up offshore companies to allow these individuals and to allow these companies to move money away from their system where they would have been privy to paying taxes, and so questions may have been made as to where you got this money from, to move it safely to these shell companies where it's now hidden, because a lot of these tax haven offers secrecy, or for some kind of confidentiality and protection. So your money would have been hidden. So nobody would have known who had the money, where the money was, where the
Let
money
me
came
pause
from,
you up
and
there
stuff
just
like
for
that.
a moment. Shell company basically is going to be a building with nothing happening inside of it. Is essentially what the word implies. It's a shell company.
Right.
So you register it for the purpose of saying I can now do banking here because I operate in this country, when in fact my business is not conducted here.
Right. Yeah. So basically, shell companies would be where you would go to a legal firm like Mossack Fonseca, and what they'll do, they'll register a shell company in your name, or sometimes they'll have a director. So the director is not actually yourself or anybody, but somebody else that you'll get. So that's a director, but director only in quotation marks. It doesn't really have much power, because sometimes the director will then sign over power of attorney to you to be able to transact business. So they'll have these companies. They'll register these companies probably in Panama or wherever tax havens are allowed to register, British Virgin Islands or the Cayman. And it's normally a company based in a building. So there's a physical building, there's an address, and probably your company will just be there in a filing cabinet, maybe, for example. It has the name of a director. So the director would be the person who, if anything, questions come up, a director name comes up, but it's not your name, so it's hidden. And then you are now, once that is done, you're able now to open a bank account within that territory. And then once you're able to open a bank account in that territory, then you're able now to maneuver your financial resources wherever you want into that particular agency.
Folks like yourself will understand exactly how this works. I'm asking you to really lay out a roadmap so all of our audience can understand it. So, all right. So I have a shell company in Island X, for instance.
Right.
I'm being accommodated here. But I'm not doing any business here. How do I get my money out of the place I'm operating from to that company?
Well, there are different ways to do it. A lot of the time, you will have the banking sector definitely will play a part in moving the money from point A to point B.
So point B in this case, where I have the shell company, they act as an intermediary, so I can in fact be paying them for the purchase of something because it's coming through them as the code. That is what I wanted to understand.
So and that way now, there seem to be some tangible good, but there's no tangible good. Let me give you an example, of how corporations normally would do it. So, for example, let's look at Apple. Apple, for example, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, one of the biggest companies in terms of valuability in the world. And just recently, within 2013, 2014, a lot of questions came up about Apple, and just recently also in the UK, with regards to Apple, Microsoft, and Google not paying taxes, proper corporation taxes in the companies that they're based in. And what actually happens is that they would set up a subsidiary company at a tax haven. So, for example, they may set it up in the British Virgin Islands, or they may set it up in the Cayman Islands, the Isle of Man, which is off the British coast, or Luxembourg, or even Switzerland. And then these companies, they would license to these companies. These companies would then own the intellectual property rights of these particular organizations. So they'll own the intellectual property rights of Apple, the trademarks, and all those different things. So when Apple now makes their profit and does what they have to do, at the end of the year, they may generate, let's say, $200 to $300 billion in profit. Because they don't own the intellectual property rights, they would tell the taxman in the particular country, well, we now have to send money to the people who own the rights because we have to pay licensing fees.
Yes, creditors.
And of course,
they are one of our creditors.
And they would obviously make some sort of legal argument as to how much they'll have to pay the particular licensing fee would be. So maybe they may transfer maybe 1.5, maybe a billion. You know, they'll keep it in a certain way so it doesn't raise too much eyebrows to these organizations, to that particular entity, and then they'll pay the tax on whatever it means. So they're probably gonna rob the particular country of maybe 60-70% of the tax that the organization would have. And just recently I read a study that was done by a well-known professor in economics who used to work with a consultancy firm McKinsey, in which he estimated that there are over $20 to $25 trillion based in offshore tax havens throughout the world.
$20 to $25 trillion.
$20 to $25 trillion.
And while we're talking about the Panama expose, or Panama Papers, as they are commonly called, it is true to say that if you're looking at $25 trillion, be it Panama or many of the island offshore banking facilities, a small amount of money, comparatively speaking, is in fact in this area of the world. Because if you run between Europe and the United States,
it's estimated that we have close to maybe $5 or $6 trillion within our hemisphere here.
$5 to $6 trillion down here. So it is fair to say
that's US, not TT.
He without sin cast the first stone, but stones will be cast anyway. So we are in Panama, and now we have given our listeners a clear idea as to how these offshore, these shell companies, in fact, operate. And now you can have Because I'm trying to make sure we don't use a broad brush in this. You can be doing offshore banking, but not be illegal. Is that correct?
Well, there's some technicality because I mean you've heard the Icelandic Prime Minister former Icelandic Prime Minister mention.
Is he former or is he current? Yes, go ahead, please.
He's somewhere in the middle, I guess.
Somewhere there, yes.
That there's a certain legality, more or less, for want of a better word, in the way that these things are set up. So Mossack Fonseca are continuing arguing. We did nothing that breached the law. Everything we did was legal. So we acted within the pure legal framework of what I guess our country laws are, or within legal framework of what the country laws are, where the particular entity, foundation, trust, or whatever was set up for the individual. So there's always this question of legality and illegality. Of course, lawyers can argue it either way. That's what I guess what you have high-paying lawyers for. But then it comes to the question of ethics. And that was it ethically and morally right for you to be able to where did you get this money from? I guess the first question. And then once you have this money, why did you now why did you do this and set up an offshore foundation or offshore trust or offshore company and put your money there? Why you just didn't come forward and state, okay, this is the money that I've earned and this is what I got it for X, Y, and Z. But instead you set up these companies and then it leads to questions and queries. And I guess this is where the whole idea of corruption and money laundering will come into the play.
The CEO of Disclosure today is our guest. His name is Rishi Maharaj. We are very happy to have him here. What you have described there is something that will be legal in one place and not illegal in another place. With the world being a global village, one would expect, I would have thought, that with the number of monitoring organizations that do cooperation throughout the world, no country would be exempt from that sort of scrutiny. Why is it in a case like Panama, they're able to operate protecting these assets and considering that if the international community put pressure on you, they can squeeze you out of business? How will they allow to?
They can squeeze you out of business, yes, but then there's also the question of what connections or high-ranking companies like this would have. I mean, you're talking about people who are high up there. Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, President Putin has been named.
Yes.
We haven't heard of what U.S. named businesses or politicians that probably may or do exist. And then the power of the lobbyists that these companies will be able to employ within these orgs. So you have to understand that although in the eyes of the normal common man, there are certain questions of legality, illegality, or ethics or morality with regards to these transactions. In the corporate business world, one, it is seen as a norm. And then because of the high level of connections that these things go into, it is a lot of lobbying and protections that are put in place to protect these kind of individuals.
You cannot get the door open if you don't knock on it.
Right.
And the complicity is what I saw, and you concur with the facts. The facts is that no matter what organization you have up there, if you have people that are moving to ensure that this kind of money, we're talking about $25 trillion, you said, this kind of money, you're going to have a lot of people who are a little wink and a nod. And that's why certain places are allowed to get away with it. Exactly how would these documents hacked is going to be a question, I wonder, because whenever you get to court, you're going to get a cute attorney who's going to say this information was gathered through illegal means. In this case, the bank said they were hacked. Is that going to make a difference in any of this?
Well, I don't think they were hacked. From at least from my when I looked into it and I did my own background research, I realized there was actually a source or a leak within Mossack Fonseca, a blower, exactly, a whistleblower who contacted these two journalists in Germany.
Gotcha.
And said, and they communicate with each other via encrypted kind of SMS kind of system that exists that allow whistleblowers to be able to communicate who want to whistle in a safe environment.